How you doing, Bruce?
Good, man. How are you?
Good, good. First question. Who are you?
Who am I? I am Bruce Horak. I am a visually impaired visual artist and performer creator. Currently living in Canada. I have been on the road, living out of a backpack for 7 years or so, 7.5 years maybe. And yeah, that's me. I do some creating, do some performing, travel around
Right
like
on.
a hobo sapien.
And what are you working on right now?
Currently, I am, well, it's a day off, but I'm in the middle of a run of a new show at the Tarragon Theatre in Toronto called Undercover, which is created by Rebecca Northan and myself under the auspices of a company called Spontaneous Theatre. And Spontaneous Theatre, what we do is we invite an audience member on stage to join us on an adventure. And Undercover, the audience member gets to be a rookie cop on their first day on the job.
Wow.
And it's a murder mystery, so there might be a murder to solve. And it's been going like gangbusters. We opened about a week and a half ago. We've done 20 shows, 20 public performances. We have yet to do the second act the same way twice. The second act is basically the searching for clues and interrogating the suspects, and we just follow the audience members' impulses. And I mean, the one thing is there is a correct answer. We don't just improvise to make them right. There is a correct answer. And when we were rehearsing the show, we had a retired homicide detective come in and run through bits of the show with us. And he told us that statistically only 40% of homicides are actually solved, that there's a conviction. We're running about the same average, actually. Only about 40% of the audience members are getting it correct. But that's not really the point. The point of the show is have a good time. And they seem to be.
So let's talk a little bit about your painting. What did you start out doing first? Was it music, theater, painting, or were you kind of always doing sort of artistic things growing up?
Yeah, my family was really artistically inclined. My parents certainly encouraged. I'm the youngest of four boys, and they encouraged us to do the arts as much as we could. So I remember taking piano lessons in, must have been grade two or three. Guitar lessons pretty young. Dad was always sketching and drawing. He was kind of an amateur cartoonist as well, and so we'd always get a birthday card that was hand drawn and painted by Dad. Mom was a writer. Dad also taught English, and he was a drama teacher at St. Mary's High School in Calgary when he first moved there. So family was a big inspiration for all of the music, and I did music up until grade 10, I think, when we got to high school, and it's like you could sort of choose your options, and I chose drama and art in high school. And then when I got to grade 12, I had to drop one of my options, so I ended up dropping art and continuing on in drama, but always sketching and doodling here and there. But I got kind of frustrated with the art. I have one of my brothers, Clayton, is a visual artist, and he went off to Alberta College of Art and Design and just really flourished at it, but there was a lot of struggle there. And I've got an older brother who's in theater as well, and an older brother who's a musician. So I'm sort of kind of watching all of them and thinking, which one am I really passionate about? And theater just kind of took the cake. And I really wanted to be a playwright when I first came out of high school. But yeah, a few years ago,
Well, you kind of are a playwright, aren't you? I mean,
yeah, I think so. And a musician. I still compose and write music for theater, and painting kind of was on the sidelines for a long time. And then a friend of mine asked me, we were sitting down, and he asked me how it is that I'm able to navigate the world and do what I do with only 9% vision. We had a really long conversation. I mean, he had known me since college, and he did not know the full story of how I lost 91% of my eyesight to cancer when I was a baby. And, my right eye was removed and my left eye was irradiated, and scar tissue developed over the retina of my left eye. And so I have very, very extreme tunnel vision, basically, with a cataract having developed after that. So with very limited vision, I was still able to pursue a career in theater. And, when I got a contact lens in high school, I realized that I could look, with a fair amount of effort and practice, I could look like a fully sighted person, and spent a lot of time practicing that. And to some degree of success, I suppose, but the detriment of it was that there was a bit of frustration at times where, people would be asking me, "Hey, do you see that thing over there?" And under the guise of trying to appear to be fully sighted, I would have to lie and say, yes, I could. So there were certain things in the world that I missed out on. But I got to Toronto in 2001, and probably about 8 years after that, when my agent called and said he had an audition for a movie called Blindness, where everyone in the world goes blind. He says, you don't quite look blind enough, so we need to get you looking more blind. And I went to the CNIB and I got a white cane, which completely changed my life. I started using this white cane, and it meant that I didn't have to pretend to be sighted, that I could actually just be myself. And it opened up this world of kind of exploration, and it was really lovely. I mean, I had really not wanted to get the cane for so long. I thought it was going to make me a target, and I thought that by being kind of out as a blind person, it was going to be more problem than it was worth. But what it ended up being was an opportunity to actually, for one thing, improve my posture, so I wasn't hunched over trying to see the world in front of me, but that people would help me in situations, and there's been situations where I've almost been hit by a car, but the car, seeing the white cane, realizes I can't see them, and so we stop. Or moving down the sidewalk, I'm able to not have to play human pinball on Yonge Street. So anyway, Brandon and I were sitting talking about this kind of world of visual impairment, and I suggested that I would try to interpret how I see him through a painting. Right. And so I kind of started painting portraits, and in the first year I did basically one a day for a year, and then I've just totally fallen in love with putting paint on canvas, and I've moved into landscape painting and really big stuff now. So I'm working on like 5 feet, 4 feet. I think one I did a couple of months ago that was like 8 feet tall. So just really loving working in that and interpreting the colors as I see them, and I see refractions around things. So there's some auras and hues that I kind of play with, and so it's
because on your bio it sort of says part of the painting was kind of to sort of show people how you see.
Yeah, and I love it. And it's made some really marvelous connections, and I've had opportunities to do artist in residence programs where you go somewhere and you rent a studio and you just kind of immerse yourself in it for a while. But I've also done these just kind of by fluke. It's like people contact me and say, "Listen, I hear that you're living out of a backpack. It's like we're going away for 2 months. Do you want our place in exchange for a painting?" Which has been incredible. Like go someplace and they're like, "Yeah, here's a house, or here's the study, and you can set your paints up here. And there's a big wall we'd love a painting for." I was down in Portland, Oregon, did that, and it was just a riot.
I watched that video. I don't know where it was. I think it was a Gladstone house, I believe. You did a YouTube video of, I think it was a forest.
Could be.
Do you know what I'm talking about? You did,
is the high speed one?
Yeah, you did like a high speed one. It was trees, right?
Yeah. Well, that was, I started doing, I would just set the camera up and do the time lapse video and kind of record the creation of paintings. And I put a bunch of those up on my website as well. So they're I should probably do like a page dedicated to it. It's really fun to actually watch a painting, kind of like a canvas, go from nothing to something.
It is. It's really cool. Well, definitely we'll put a link to your bio.
Cool.
Is there, I watched another YouTube clip and you were just talking about, okay, I've been brought here, I've been commissioned to paint this painting, and I think you showed the fireplace and where the painting was going to go and stuff. And, and at that point, you don't have any idea. Like, I'm assuming, well, maybe you do, but it seemed like you didn't really have too much of an idea. Is there do you feel a lot of pressure, or is it you just kind of trust in the process, or what's that kind of like?
Well, with that one, Mike and Michelle, they really gave me free rein. There was very, very little that they had impressed upon me as to what they wanted. They just said, "Here's the space, here's the room it's going to be in." So I had been, I showed them the stuff that I had been working on up until that point. I said, obviously, I'm going to try to continue my practice here. So I can't tell you exactly what's coming next, but I think something in this line, you can kind of mark the trajectory
Yeah.
I was looking on trees, and I was looking on at a perspective of looking up. So I'm like, I'd like to continue that if I can. And then I just sat in that room, and I got a sense of the color of the room and the light of it. It's a really well lit room, so, but daylight changes things. So if it was a really dark room, I might have used a different color palette. But to go with the some tones that were going to match the wood of the table and what was on the walls already. And then it was really about, I sat there and I did a couple of quick sketches, and then away I went.
So in the what do you call it? In that sped up video,
Mhm.
how long did it actually take to paint that picture?
I'd say that was about 5 hours, 5 or 6 hours, let's say.
Right.
Yeah, about that.
And was that one? Is that kind of a consistent sort of time frame, or does it differ? Do they sort of
Yeah,
vary?
it depends on the painting. It really depends. I mean, some of them you can sort of do. I'd say the shortest is going to be an hour, hour and a half or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's some that have taken me months and months and months. There's an oil painting at the Tarragon that, yeah, I think I started it one year and finished it the next. So with lots of kind of stopping in and checking in on it. But yeah, I tend to try to work as fast as I can, mostly because I get bored quick. Move on. Next thing.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the next thing, so Assassinating Thompson is
Yes, sir.
speaking about painting quickly. Let's talk a little bit about that
Sure.
that show. So how did that come to be?
It was, well, really that show is the evolution of my painting practice. So when I started painting portraits, I would sit with friends for an hour and a half or 2 hours, and I would look at their aura, and I would use the aura as the base tone for the portrait, and then I would just kind of sit there and we would chat for a couple of hours. And that was a big part of why I fell in love with it, was getting to just have some FaceTime with someone for a couple of hours, which is pretty rare these days, where you don't have an agenda, really. We just sit and paint. And inevitably there would be the question of how I got into painting, how much do I see, there were all these sort of biographical questions that I would get asked. And, who are your influences and things like that. And for me, one of them was a painter named Tom Thompson, who was a Canadian painter who died mysteriously in 1917. And his work greatly influenced one of Canada's first art movements, which was the Group of Seven. And years ago, I wrote a short piece for the Glumbo Museum, which was the complete history of Canadian art in 40 minutes for kids. And that was where I first kind of encountered the story of Tom Thompson. So during these painting portrait sessions, I would tell some of the theories I had heard about Tom Thompson. And this show, Assassinating Thompson, really kind of evolved out of these portrait sessions. And Ryan Gladstone, who has Monster Theatre out in Vancouver, they do a lot of the fringe tours in Canada every year. And they had won the lottery in 2013, which meant that they could choose which festivals they were going to. They didn't have to apply for each individual festival across the country. So he said, we got the fringe slot. Do you want to do that show about Thompson? And so in that year, I wrote a bunch of drafts of this script and had all sorts of ideas of what Thompson was going to be, my show about Tom Thompson. And then 2 days before we went into rehearsal, and I had written like more of a play about Tom Thompson where I played like 9 different characters, kind of one-man show style. And then the day before we started rehearsal, my friend Riel came over to have her portrait painted. And while I was doing it, I basically, without even realizing it, I presented my version of Assassinating Thompson, which is to stand in front of somebody and paint their portrait and then tell this story, kind of interwoven with my biography and the tale of Tom Thompson. So during rehearsals, Ryan and I would bring people in, and I would set up my easel, and I would paint the portrait of the room. So I think that the first week and a half of rehearsal, Ryan is in every single portrait with somebody else, and I would just run through the show, and I would stand there and I would start talking and kind of improvise my way through it. And then the afternoons we would sit down and say, okay, so here's what worked and here's what didn't, and the next day I would do it again. And there was no script for the longest time. It was just kind of story points and ideas. And I really wanted to challenge myself to create a show that felt like a conversation, didn't feel like someone was just working off the script.
Yeah.
Yeah, so 3 years later, or 4 years later, I'm still doing the show, and it continues to evolve. I'd say it's pretty much set, but there are moments that it just really feels like you're in an art studio and you're having your portrait painted. And
does that ground you? Like having that when you're painting on stage, is that do you know what I mean? Does that ground you in any way or relax you?
I find it really, really profoundly connective. I feel like I'm actually connecting with the audience in a way that I haven't with a lot of other shows. And that's really something. I think for me, right, for me in the last 7 or 8 years that I've been living on the road, I have felt myself becoming more and more disconnected. Certainly through like every day with social media, and even just walking down the street, like people have their faces in their phones, and here I am with my cane, finally walking with my head up and trying to make that eye contact with people, for lack of a better word. And it just feels like it's less and less and less, and people have less time and less energy for connection. And so to sit in a theater and to just connect with an audience for 75 minutes, and then the time before and after, I feel like is really, really special. It's really special.
Wow. I love that story you tell in Assassinating Thompson of meeting. You went to do a lecture at a school, and there was a little boy that came up after you finished the lecture and said that I see like you. Is that that's right?
Yeah, he it was at the W. Ross Macdonald School for the Blind in Brantford, Ontario, and I sort of got up and told my life story. And as I was leaving, this little guy came up and said that he really connected with me. He's got very low vision, wears thick glasses, and he said his big struggle was how he felt like he didn't fit in. He's not quite blind enough to be blind, but he's not sighted enough to be sighted. And it kind of dawned on me, and what I shared with him was that there really is no one that sees like him. And that's really special too. I mean, I'm very, very fortunate to have a career in the arts and the opportunity to share my perspective with other people and hopefully connect on that. Yeah.
Well, you came from a really supportive family as well, because your dad.
Big time.
What was your dad had a similar disorder with his eye, right?
Yeah, Dad had retinoblastoma in one of his eyes, and retinoblastoma is cancer of the retina, and it's genetic, so he passed it on to me. And when I was diagnosed at 18 months, that was when, like, my father had spent his whole life not knowing that he'd had cancer. His parents had told him that he was sick, and that's how he lost his eye. So when I was diagnosed, the doctor said, well, this is a genetic form, and he looked at my dad and he's like, how did you lose your eye? And Dad said, well, I don't know, I had a virus or something when I was younger. So they looked into his file and they found out, no, actually Dad had this cancer, and he passed it on to me, which was devastating for my dad, realizing that ultimately my vision loss, and what they were going to do for me was they were actually going to remove both of my eyes, which was just horrifying to my dad. And so he had quite a severe breakdown at that point, and eventually went to the doctor and said, well, you have to save some of my son's eyesight, just any of it at all. So they had to remove the right eye, but they flew me to Toronto and they irradiated the left eye, which by this stroke of luck really just saved this very little bit of vision that I have. So Dad and I had a pretty profound connection over this loss of eyesight. But he was just the kind of person who had found joy in everything. So, once a year, Dad and I would have to go off to our eye doctor to have our artificial eyes polished. And, we just made a day of it. We'd go down and we'd get our eyes taken out, and they would take them away to polish them. And then Dad and I would go down the street to the comic shop and buy some comic books and get some treats and go sit in the park while our eyes are being polished. And, he just made, he made any sort of trial or tribulation or any sort of suffering into something that was fun, and yeah, I'm very grateful for him. And when he was Dad was diagnosed with esophageal cancer in 2004, or sorry, 2003, and it was at that point he said something like, we have to learn to celebrate what we have and not grieve what we've lost, which really was a big inspiration for me to want to get back into drawing and painting, because I wanted to show him how I see him and how the legacy that he had left me. And I know what it must have taken. Well, I don't know. I can imagine what it must have taken to go into that doctor's office and demand that they try to find some way to save the eyesight, and how hard it must have been for him to realize that he, had genetically passed on this cancer.
Yeah.
And as a tribute to him, I mean, a lot of the art that I do is I couldn't possibly do what I do without what my dad had done.
So let's talk about the cancer show. When was that first performed?
This is Cancer, premiered as a show called An Intimate Evening with Cancer at the Summerworks Festival in 2006. Okay. I created the character of Cancer. I want to say it would have been around 2004 or 5.
Okay.
I had developed a bouffon clown, which is like a really dark, twisted clown character named Foof, who was a demon from hell. And Foof would be summoned to whatever. We would do these dark cabaret nights, late night cabarets here in Toronto, the Lunacy Cabaret, and the show would start at 11 o'clock or whatever, and then the smoke and mirrors and Foof would come from hell, and he would try to seduce an audience member and try to bring them back to hell with him. And he was twisted lumps and bumps, and he just looked like a gross character, and a lot of fun to play, just kind of interacting with the audience and handing out chocolates and flowers and singing love songs and trying to get a kiss or whatever. It was all very, very dark and twisted and very fun nights. And these were kind of grotesque nights of comedy. And one night I showed up to do my Foof character, and there was another clown on the bill named Foo. Helen Donnelly's character, Foo, and she's got seniority, so they told me I had to change my name because we couldn't have Foo and Foof on the same bill. And I had spent that day auditioning at the Hospital for Sick Kids to be a therapeutic clown, and realized that I really had no business attempting to do any sort of proper clowning for children, because I think my bent is a darker world. So anyway, having gone through that experience, I showed up and they said you had to change your name, and I just off the cuff decided, well, I want you to call me Cancer, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing. I'm going to try to seduce someone to bring me home with them. Wow. And it was really like I was just really kind of angry and spiteful, and I just wanted to try something, and something dangerous, I guess. All the other comics on the bill said, well, if you do that, they'll kill you. So I went and did it anyway. And it was a total blur. I don't remember any of the performance, except afterwards when I was going to leave this rowdy cabaret, and this fella came up and said, that was amazing. I've never laughed at cancer before. He's like, I have cancer. My family never says it. Nobody talks about it. And here, the audience was shouting at me and telling me to, go to hell and get out of my cigarettes and whatever else they were shouting at me and laughing. And this guy's like, this was really great. You got to keep doing it. I've never seen anything like that before. And so, and I kind of laughed at him and I said, yeah, that's great. I'm never doing that again. That was just a one-off. But I got a phone call from this gal who had been at the show, and she said her mom was going in for a double mastectomy, and would I come and perform as Cancer at a fundraiser for her mom? I said, oh, it's my mom's sense of humor. She'd love it. So I developed a piece where I would bring an audience member up on stage, and they would get the chance to beat Cancer with a foam pool noodle. And that's what I did at the next cabaret. I, did like a whole bit, and it was Cancer thinks that everyone loves him because they run for cancer and raise money for cancer, and he's shocked and surprised when the audience kind of turn on him, so he gives them the opportunity to fight him. And out of this kind of cabaret piece that I was doing, every couple of months, the show developed, where I thought about, well, what if we tried to see the world from Cancer's point of view? Like, what does the world look like when you are an immortal killer? who just loves people. You love people so much, but everyone you fall in love with gets sick and die because of you. Or what is that world like? And Cancer keeps records of everyone that he's ever fallen in love with. And he loves people so much, but the realization is that he hurts them. So in the show, Cancer appears, and he's in this gold lame speed skating outfit. He looks like a twisted kind of Oscar trophy or something. And it's a combination of, I don't know, Eddie Izzard and Mick Jagger or something. And he's just outrageous character, who through the course of the show discovers that humanity doesn't love him so much, and then kind of tells his side of the story. And there's the autobiographical element of Cancer falls in love with my father, Carl Horak, and falls in love with Carl Horak's son, Bruce, his eyes. And then at the end of the show, he falls in love with an audience member, and they come up on stage and beat the crap out of him.
So let me quickly ask you about your hobosapian
Sure.
lifestyle. Is that where are you at with that? Are you still going to be living out of a backpack?
Still traveling. Yeah, it's been seven and a half years now of basically going gig to gig, and my mail still comes to Toronto, and I've got a storage unit here, and that kind of life. I have a dream of getting a place with a little studio out back and a yard for a big Bernese mountain dog to run around in, and a short walk to the post office, and in a small town somewhere. I would just love that. I know that I'm a small town kind of guy. I find the city to be draining and overwhelming, but the work is here for now.
Yeah.
I've got gigs kind of lining up. Really, fortunately, things are kind of falling into place for the next couple of years, which is awesome. I'm putting money away and saving up and hoping to get a place. That's the dream. But I still, even then, I think about, well, if I had my house and my studio and all that, would I really stop traveling? Would I really stop going for gigs? And I'm not sure. Yeah. I know I get itchy feet after a couple of months when I'm in one place for a couple of months. I go, gotta see more of the world while I can. But yeah, I don't know. I'm still very much enamored of the lifestyle of traveling and working and meeting new people.
If you could meet someone but let's just say someone from history or from who is alive, who would you like to meet?
Jesus Christ, I think. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I want to meet Jesus and go play catch with the guy. Find out if he's left-handed or right-handed. These are the pressing concerns.
I think playing catch with Jesus would be something.
Yeah, why not? I mean, you never know what kind of conversation you get into because the great things happen when you're just playing catch or like a cookout. Cook a tin of baked beans with JC over a fire.
That could be a good brand of beans, JC beans. And what would you ask him?
Well, I guess you had to start with how's your day? Like, how's it going? I guess I'd want a little bit of advice. Mm-hmm. I want to know if it's a good idea for me to think about settling down, or if the traveling lifestyle is really where it's at. Seemed like towards the end of his life, he was more into the traveling thing.
Yeah, that's true.
Who knows? He might have wanted to retire at some. I mean, things just didn't end well for him. That's the thing.
I guess it depends how you look at it. On Earth, I guess. But then he rose again, for goodness sakes.
That's true.
What else do I want to ask you? What's your favorite part about being an artist?
My favorite part? I think there's so much about it. There's so much that I love. I love the moment just before I start a painting, when the canvas is blank and there's that fear of like, what the hell am I doing and what's this going to be? There's that moment that is always surprising where you step back and there's that feeling of, okay, that's done. And I never know when that's going to be. And I love that moment. And then I also truly, truly love and cherish the moments where, I kind of put the thing out into the world and somebody connects with it and is willing to share that connection with me. To just come up and say, or to email, or just make the comment of, that's really great, I love that. that's those truly profound, and it makes me feel like, okay, this is worthwhile. My intention behind the work is I just want to put something beautiful out there, and when somebody responds to that beauty, I go, yeah, it's like the cycle, the little circle is complete.
Nice. All right. Well,
Thanks, man.
Bruce Horak, thank you so much for sharing your story.
My pleasure. Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you.